Welcome, Sip&Talkers. We are back, and seriously, thank you all so much.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are.
We are still just reeling from the response to that last deep dive we did, the one on defense procurement. Oh my gosh.
Oh, it was wild. Our comments section absolutely lit up after that one. The whole thing about sourcing tank parts from, like, the subcontractor's subcontractor.
Yes. People were messaging us saying they almost spit out their coffee. It was something else.
It really was.
And that huge, passionate reaction, it showed us that you, our listeners, you really connect with these conversations, these deep dives into serious structural issues.
Right, especially when we can manage to lay out the facts, even if the facts themselves are, well, a little unsettling.
Exactly. It shows there's a real hunger to understand the invisible forces that are at play.
So today, by popular demand, we're pulling on that same thread. We're looking at this huge collective belief system, a cultural phenomenon that dictates everything from, say, what phone you buy to how your taxes are spent.
We are talking about the pathology known as CP value.
CP value. In Taiwan, those three letters are they're everywhere. It's the standard for everything.
It really is. It feels like so many people don't look at quality first. The first question is always, is the CP value high? But let's back up for a second. Where did this even come from, this idea of a cost-performance ratio? Isn't that supposed to be a good thing?
Theoretically, yes. I mean, if you look at the term's origin, cost-performance ratio, in a perfect rational economic model, that's just a consumer trying to maximize their utility.
Okay, so getting the most bang for your buck.
Exactly. You want the highest possible performance, the best quality you can get for the least amount of money. It's smart. It's resource optimization.
But that's the ideal. What we've seen happen and what we're talking about today is a really severe distortion of that logic.
A very subtle but really profound shift.
Right. People aren't trying to maximize the numerator anymore, the performance, the quality. Instead, they've become almost pathologically obsessed with minimizing the denominator.
The price.
The price. Minimizing it at all costs, ironically.
And that's the difference, isn't it? It's the shift from, I want the best quality I can afford, to, I will only buy the absolute cheapest thing available.
Which turns smart shopping into what we're calling the cheap trap.
And when you scale that mentality up from, buying a phone charger to designing a bridge or procuring military equipment, the consequences are, well, they're brutal.
Because to survive in a market that only rewards the lowest price, companies are forced to institutionalize what's called the chabuduo culture.
The just passable culture.
It's just good enough. And you see this reflected in global analysis. The Economist has talked about this in the context of Asian supply chains.
They did. They pointed out that when competition is so fierce that your profit margins are basically zero, it just kills any incentive for research and development. It kills innovation.
Why bother making something better if the market will only pay for something cheaper?
Precisely. And that leads to the crucial blind spot, the thing that turns this from an economic idea into a real societal hazard.
And that is the total neglect of negative externalities, the hidden costs.
Yes. When the entire conversation about CP value is just about the cash you pay up front, the short-term price, it ignores everything else.
Like the maintenance costs, the safety risks, the cost in human lives.
So our mission today is pretty clear. We're not talking about which boba shop gives you a few extra pearls for your money.
No. We are diving into the lethal CP value. The kind that causes bridges to fail, creates massive defense loopholes, and has turned the simple act of crossing the street into what some international reports have called a death game.
We're going to explore this through three, let's call them disaster zones.
Okay, lay them out for us.
Disaster zone 1, public works. Why is the lowest tender price system basically a disaster manufacturing machine for public construction?
Zone 2, national security. Why is it that having perfect paper qualifications in procurement doesn't get you actual defense capability?
And finally, Zone 3, traffic design. We're going to analyze why the system repeatedly chooses cheap administrative fixes, like a million speed cameras, or that absurd two-stage left turnover, expensive but proven engineering solutions.
Oh, that two-stage left turn is the perfect example of this whole problem in miniature. We've touched on the wait turn monopoly protests before.
We have.
Today we're going to break down exactly how that rule became a time black hole and a massive safety hazard. It's like the perfect case study of a low-cost fix during a high-cost failure.
But before we jump in, let's just frame this. If we were to look at Taiwan's traffic system as a product on the international stage, what would its CP value be?
Wow, that is a spicy question to start with.
I think so.
Based on the data we're going to talk about, the high cost and safety, the low performance and efficiency, I'd argue it's not just low value, it's negative value.
Negative value.
Yeah, the inputs, your time, your safety, your quality of life, they far exceed any measurable benefit you get out of it.
A negative value.
Okay,
that sets the tone perfectly. Let's get into it.
So, Section 1. Let's really dig into this curse, this pathology of minimizing cost.
Right. So we established that CP value, at its core, is about resource optimization. It's a tool used in things like personal finance or life design to help you make rational plans, to minimize regret.
It's supposed to be the responsible, rational way to think. Maximize your long-term benefit.
But as we said, that rationality gets totally corrupted when the entire system, both consumers and, more importantly, public procurement, is just obsessed with getting the lowest number. It institutionalized the idea that high CP value just means cheapest.
And this isn't just about being frugal. It creates this pervasive, quick and cheap mentality that seeps into everything, even in areas where quality should be completely non-negotiable.
What bridges?
Or defense system. And to make sure you, our listener, really get this idea of the hidden cost blind spot, let's go back to that phone charger analogy.
Okay, the charger. So you buy the cheap, unbranded one for, say, $5. Amazing CP value, right? Low cost. It works. For now. But because it's built so cheaply, it breaks every 3 months. So over a year, you've bought 4 of them. You've spent $20.
Which is more than the one single, reliable $20 charger you decided was too expensive in the first place?
Exactly. But it's not just about the $20. What if that cheap charger shorts out? What if it starts a fire?
Right. Then you have property damage, or way worse. That initial low price was a complete illusion. The whole life CP value, including the risk, the replacements, it's just terrible.
And that's the lesson we need to scale up to the level of national infrastructure. Experts who study these engineering projects consistently find the same thing.
What's that?
The cost of constant maintenance, of repairs, of disaster recovery, it often ends up being 2 or even 3 times the original budget.
So that short-term saving is actually a massive long-term debt.
It is. So this brings up the big question. If the long-term math is so obviously bad, why does the system keep doing it? Is this just, a poor man's mentality, a nation being super frugal because of resource constraints?
That's the easy answer, maybe the charitable answer, but it's not the real one.
No, the true issue is structural, and it's much, much more insidious.
Yes. When you dig into governance studies, into critiques of public administration, a much deeper problem comes up. And this is the key insight for today. It is accountability avoidance.
Accountability avoidance. That's a powerful phrase.
It's crucial. We have to understand the incentive structure for the bureaucrat, for the government official. Why is choosing the cheapest option the safest choice for them personally, even if they know it's a bad choice for the public?
Okay, walk us through it.
It all revolves around the legal concept of profiting a vendor.
Right, the idea that you're giving a company a sweetheart deal. Corruption.
Exactly. In public procurement, if you choose the absolute lowest tender price, the lowest bid, you're legally bulletproof.
Because no one can accuse you of giving a friend a kickback.
No one. You can't be accused of misusing taxpayer money. But let's say you choose vendor B, who bid 5% higher than vendor A.
Even if vendor B has a much better track record.
Right. By making that choice, you expose yourself to an investigation. You have to defend why you spent more money. But if you choose the lowest price vendor A, you have the perfect defense.
I was saving the taxpayer money.
I was being diligent. You have a perfect paper trail. The focus shifts from guaranteeing the best outcome to guaranteeing the safest procedure.
And that creates this stunning irony that defines the whole CP value curse in public life.
Which is what?
The choice that is the most legally safe for the official's career, the lowest price, is the one that statistically guarantees the highest risk to public safety and the biggest waste of public money in the long run.
So you avoid individual, immediate accountability.
But you guarantee systemic national failure down the line.
And we can't just gloss over this. It's not that these officials are all corrupt. The system itself is designed to reward bureaucratic self-preservation over technical common sense.
It puts them in an impossible bind. How can you expect quality when the legal penalty for choosing a better, more expensive vendor is so much higher and more immediate than the political fallout from a bridge that collapses 5 years from now?
The legal risk calculation completely dominates the engineering risk calculation.
And that idea of accountability avoidance leads us straight into Section 2, Public Works.
Right. The lowest tender price system isn't some dusty old rule. It's written right into the Government Procurement Act. And in theory, its goal is noble: prevent corruption, save money.
You have to acknowledge the positive intent, but the negative reality is just. It's documented in painful detail by auditors and engineering groups. This mechanism forces contractors into these insane, cutthroat bidding wars just to get the job.
And if you win a contract with a predatory low bid, you have to make a profit somehow.
Which means you are economically forced to cut corners. You use substandard materials, you hire less skilled workers, you skip crucial safety checks.
This is the disaster cycle in action. Winning the contract at a rock-bottom price almost guarantees the project will fail later on.
And the current economic climate is only making this worse. You have global spikes in the cost of materials, labor shortages in 2024-2025.
So the government's initial price estimates are becoming totally unrealistic.
Exactly. And that leads to these incredibly high project flow rates. That means the government puts out a bid for a project, and nobody
bids.
Nobody reputable will take the job.
Yeah.
Because they know they can't do it for that price without delivering a terrible product. We're seeing major infrastructure bids fail 2-3 times, flow rates as high as 20, even 30%.
Which means vital public works get delayed, the economy slows down, and the final cost ends up being even higher anyway.
And the human cost of this cycle, it's just starkly illustrated by the 2021 Taroko Express derailment.
49 people lost their lives, over 200 injured. And this wasn't just a random tragic accident. It was a direct systemic failure of this lowest bid thinking.
Let's connect those dots. The government had actually allocated money for safety improvements on that specific hillside. A contract was awarded for track barrier engineering.
And it was awarded to a low-price vendor.
Of course. And that vendor, trying to make a profit on that tiny margin, used shoddy construction methods, poor materials, cut corners on things like proper earth retention.
So the engineering failed. The hidden hazard that caused the disaster was created directly by the low-cost, substandard work.
It's the ultimate collapse of whole-life CP value. You save a tiny amount of money upfront on a contractor's bid.
And you pay for it with dozens of lives, massive social trauma, and billions in reconstruction and legal settlements.
The good news is this realization seems to be finally prompting a major institutional shift. Starting in late 2025, there's a big push to move away from the lowest tender price.
Towards what's called the most advantageous bid.
Right. This is a critical development. The most advantageous bid forces officials to look at more than just the price tag.
They have to do a comprehensive evaluation. They have to consider the vendor's technical skill, their past experience, their whole execution plan.
Let's contrast them clearly. Lowest bid is simple, it's fast, it's transparent, and it looks cheap in the short term.
But the downsides are catastrophic. Shoddy work, high failure rates, and rebuild costs that are 2 or 3 times the original budget.
The most advantageous bid, on the other hand, prioritizes long-term quality and reliability. But it's slower. It's more complex.
And this is where that accountability avoidance thing comes right back in, isn't it?
It does. Because to implement the most advantageous bid properly, you need robust auditing. You need highly trained officials who can actually assess a complex technical proposal, not just pick the lowest number off a spreadsheet.
And that complexity creates risk for the official. If they choose vendor B because of technical merit over the cheaper vendor A,
they now have to provide an airtight defense for that choice, which is much harder than just defending the lowest price. The system needs to protect them from that legal threat if they make the correct, technically superior decision.
But at the end of the day, the shift has to happen. Officials might like the short-term optics of saving money.
But the real burden, the debt of maintenance, rebuilding, and social trauma, it just gets passed on to the future taxpayer. We're paying for cheap political safety today with expensive physical danger tomorrow.
Okay, so if the lowest bid in public works is a disaster cycle, applying that same logic to national defenses, it's a fatal injury.
It really is. The stakes are national survival. And the CP value blind spot creates what can only be called strategic ignorance.
You'd think that in the defense sector, security and reliability would be the only priorities. But that lowest price principle still governs a huge amount of procurement for logistics, IT, non-core components.
And the loophole here is just devastating. The system focuses entirely on checking boxes. A vendor provides basic documents, company registration, tax records, and that's it.
It's all about document completion.
Right. It completely ignores the vendor's substantive capability. Can they actually deliver a military-grade, reliable product? The system doesn't ask.
which creates an open invitation for paper companies, firms with literally zero relevant experience, to win critical contracts. The real-world examples here are almost unbelievable.
Let's start with the RDX explosives contract. We're talking about $590 million. Guess who won?
I know this one, an interior decoration company.
It's an interior decoration company with very little capital. I mean, we're talking about high-grade military explosives. How is a company that hangs wallpaper equipped to handle the logistics and secure storage for RDX?
It's absurd. And then you have a critical component for rifles, 5.56 millimeter firing pins.
Let me guess, not a weapons manufacturer.
A shoe company.
A shoe company, wow. Firing pins require incredible precision, metallurgy, quality control. A shoe company knows leather and rubber. The disconnect is just staggering.
And the last one, the tea company. A tea vendor whose former director had a fraud conviction repeatedly won bids for IT equipment from the Ministry of National Defense.
For secure military IT infrastructure.
Exactly. Tea, shoes, and interior decorating, all involved in national defense.
And when officials defend this by saying, well, the regulations are old and we're legally not allowed to question the company's name if the paperwork is correct.
They're basically just admitting the system is a total failure. The critique of strategic ignorance is completely justified.
And the risk here is so much more than just getting a bad product. It's a fundamental security threat.
This is something global supply chain analysts are always stressing. When you let these inexperienced firms into your defense supply chain, you are opening the door for penetration.
Exactly. These paper companies, they lack the experience for military logistics or secure storage. And more importantly, the low price system forces them to immediately subcontract the work.
Often through 3 or 4 layers of other companies that haven't been vetted at all.
And somewhere in that subcontracting chain, with its low oversight, is the perfect opportunity to introduce malicious components.
Like backdoors in IT systems.
Or counterfeit parts in hardware. The goal was defense, but the reality you get is a brand new security liability. The government gets lame duck equipment.
It's cheap up front, it checks the document completion box, but the maintenance costs will be astronomical and it could completely fail under the stress of combat.
You're compromising combat readiness. It's the lowest CP value scenario you can possibly imagine. You paid for defense, and you got a vulnerability.
All because the bureaucracy was terrified of being accused of corruption for choosing a reliable, slightly more expensive bidder.
The reform is urgent. The expert consensus is clear. The defense sector has to mandate the most advantageous bid for all critical components. And crucially, they have to incorporate whole life cycle cost assessments.
Forcing the system to look at the total cost of ownership, including the cost of failure.
Right, and prioritize proven reliability over that seductive but ultimately dangerous low price tag.
Okay, let's move to our final and maybe most frustrating disaster zone, traffic management.
Yes, this is where you see low-cost administrative fixes, fines, rules, cameras, constantly being chosen over expensive but necessary engineering solutions.
It's why so many international observers have called the environment pedestrian hell. It's accountability avoidance, but for public inconvenience.
The government knows the road design is the problem, but fixing it is expensive, it's messy, it's politically difficult. The cheap fix is just to make a new rule.
And we have to start with the poster child for these administrative quick fixes, the uniquely Taiwanese 2-stage left turn, the hook turn.
It was created decades ago with a good intention to stop T-bone collisions for scooter riders at big intersections.
But the execution has become a nightmare. Let's break down how it fails for you, the learner. So this rule forces scooter riders turning left to first go straight through the intersection, pull into a little painted box on the right,
the waiting zone,
and then wait for the other traffic light to change before they can finish their turn.
The result is a massive time black hole. You don't just wait for one green light. During rush hour, riders get stuck for 2, sometimes 3 light cycles.
And those cycles can be 60 to 99 seconds long, so you're looking at delays of over 3 minutes just to make a single turn.
The data is clear. This policy raises the average delay on those roads by 20%. Imagine losing 3 minutes every time you make that turn on your commute.
But the absurdity really deepens when you look at the safety paradox. That little waiting box is often called the death island online.
And for good reason. It's located right in the middle of a high-traffic intersection, often in the direct path of cars turning right or just accelerating through the light.
So riders are just sitting there, exposed to fast-moving traffic and blind spots. Reports have shown that accidents inside these waiting zones have actually increased by 15%.
So the cheap fix to prevent one type of accident just introduced another, arguably worse, type of accident.
And this systemic frustration is what led to the wait-turn monopoly protests.
Which was just brilliant political theater.
It was. Riders got together in huge, organized groups and just strictly followed the rule. By all complying with the mandatory two-stage turn at once, they completely clogged the intersections, paralyzing traffic.
They weaponized the rule against itself to prove how absurd and inefficient it is.
And there is a positive sign here that the pressure is working. In 2025, cities like Tainan and Hsinchu started pilot programs where they canceled the mandatory two-stage turn on some roads.
And what happened?
A 10% reduction in intersection accidents. It directly challenges the official myth that this rule is necessary for safety.
But that rule is just a symptom, right? The core disease is car-centric design.
Absolutely. The entire system, the street design, the planning, the budgets, it's all structured to prioritize car throughput. The speed and efficiency of moving cars is more important than human safety.
And the consequences are just devastating when you look at international comparisons. The traffic fatality rate in Taiwan is 5 times higher than Japan's.
5 times, and the long-term trend data is even more damning. Over the last 20 years, traffic injuries there have soared by 400%.
400%. Meanwhile, developed nations like Japan or Germany saw their injury rates decrease by 150 to 200% in that same period.
So it's not just stagnating, it's fundamentally going in the wrong direction compared to the rest of the developed world.
And a great academic example of this is the wide lane trap.
Okay, what's that?
Research shows that car lanes wider than 4.5 meters actually increase accident rates by 50% compared to narrower 3-meter lanes.
Why would that be? It feels counterintuitive.
It's psychological. A wide open lane is a psychological invitation to speed up. The driver feels safer, more confident, and they unconsciously accelerate. Modern safety engineering actually mandates narrower lanes to naturally calm traffic down.
And even when the government throws money at the problem, that low CP value mindset gets in the way. There was a huge $40 billion human safety plan.
But experts pointed out that many roads only got half measures. The criteria they used were flawed. They optimized for the lowest immediate construction cost, not the highest safety impact.
We saw that in a tragic hit-and-run in Taichung where a pedestrian refuge island wasn't set back properly. The money was spent, the plan was announced, but the execution was cheap and incomplete.
Which brings us to the ultimate expression of this cheap management philosophy.
The speed cameras.
The world-leading density of speed cameras. The system prefers cheap enforcement over expensive engineering.
The data here is genuinely shocking. There are 1,809 fixed speed cameras. Per kilometer of road, that density is 307 times higher than Japan.
307 times. And this isn't about safety, it's about revenue. In 2024, they issued 21.25 million tickets,
generating over $20 billion in revenue, and local governments get to keep 75% of that.
It's a massive financial incentive to keep the cameras running and the roads dangerous. It's exactly why experts call this technological laziness.
The authorities would rather install a $100,000 camera, which has a low upfront cost and generates huge revenue,
than do a $1 million road restructuring, which is expensive, takes a long time, generates zero revenue, and gets you a lot of complaints about construction.
And here's the kicker. Only 12% of all that fine revenue is actually required to be spent on fundamental safety improvements.
The conclusion is inescapable. The high camera density doesn't solve the problem, because they're using an enforcement tool to mask a design problem. We know this because speeding only accounts for about 2.13% of all accident causes.
Wow. So that fact alone proves the issue is the road design, not just driver behavior.
The government chooses the cheap fine over the truly life-saving but expensive engineering work.
So we've gone through these 3 massive structural failures: public works, defense, traffic, and all 3 are symptoms of this search for what we're calling political CP value.
The low-cost, quick-win solution that minimizes immediate criticism and makes you look good in the short term.
The analogy's perfect. Installing a camera takes 2 days and instantly generates revenue. Rebuilding a road takes 2 years, costs a fortune, and all you get are complaints about traffic jams.
So the politician, who is incentivized by short election cycles, consistently chooses the path of least resistance. They prioritize their own self-preservation, that accountability avoidance, over the difficult, long-term projects that are actually needed.
And that brings us to the core challenge. The collective, silent acceptance of substandard quality has to end. The pursuit of CP value is fine when you're buying a toaster.
But it is fundamentally dangerous when you apply that logic to the value of a human life or the security of a nation.
The shift has to be both cultural and institutional. We have to move away from only focusing on short-term savings.
And start demanding whole-life CP value. That means consciously prioritizing reliability, long-term quality, and safety, even if it means a higher price tag upfront and a messier process.
And the good news is that we are seeing signs of change. In some of the traffic reforms, in the push for procurement changes, public pressure is working.
By understanding why the cheap option is chosen, the mechanics of political CP value and accountability avoidance, we can apply pressure in the right places. We can force politicians to prioritize those boring but meritorious engineering projects.
This whole deep dive wasn't about proving anyone right or wrong. It's to encourage you to engage with this logically, from multiple perspectives.
Right. We encourage you to seek out different sources, look at the authoritative analysis, and break out of those information echo chambers.
Don't just take one perspective. Try to understand the entire economic, political, and engineering system that we've laid out today. That's how we get to real critical thinking and start demanding reliable value.
This has been a really intense, but I think necessary, discussion about the true cost of value versus the illusion of a cheap price.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for coming on this deep dive with us. We hope it's given you something serious to think about, or at least a new way to look at things the next time you're stuck in traffic.
If you enjoyed this intense discussion and are looking into these structural dilemmas, please be sure to subscribe to Sip&Talk wherever you get your podcasts.
And as always, don't forget to check out our old friend Mickey's YouTube channel, Mickytolife, for fun memes and his latest travel vlogs.
We'll see you next time. Goodbye.